All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video must drop for week 8 of the fantasy hockey season. Video today, as always, presented by FanDuel Canada, North America's #1 sportsbook, the best place to be placing all your NHL bets this year, considering the amount of different markets they have, their ability to really same-game parlay anything you want in any given game, really. One of the only sportsbooks that lets you do that while betting on hockey. But for today's video, really interesting guys that I have on this must drop. A couple of them are situational. A couple of them are just guys that I think have outgrown their roles from what we've seen at the beginning of the season. So let's get into today's must drop. All right, so the first guy that we're dropping this week, 96% rostered, and that's Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on the Edmonton Oilers. The biggest reason being, if you look at the Oilers' schedule for the next week and a half, they barely play any games. They play one game from the stretch of November 29th to December 5th. That's a 7-day stretch. They have one game against the Jets, which is, for one, is also a tough matchup. Hellebuck's been playing pretty solid, and they've been playing well defensively. And then their next game after that's on December 6th against the Carolina Hurricanes. Again, another really good defensive team that you can kind of expect Edmonton not to just generate a ton of scoring opportunities against. I know they just played them, and it was a little bit of a different scenario, obviously in favor of Carolina. But I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins right now is best left on your waiver wire. Just a guy also that I think has underproduced for where people have drafted him as well. They were taking him in the first 3 to 4 rounds, kind of relying on the fact that he was just going to be a focal point of that power play. Again, the Oilers' power play has definitely not been clicking at the same rate as last season, still very solid, but also look at the facts here too. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, through 20 games last year, was averaging about 4.5 minutes per game on the power play. This year, he's averaging almost less than 3 minutes per game, so just a little bit less of a role as they try to figure out the power play a little bit more. I know Jay Woodcroft was switching around the groups a little bit. Could see the same thing with this new coach as well. Nugent-Hopkins as well, over the last 5 games played, he's 7th on the team in expected goals for. That doesn't give me a ton of confidence in a guy that's going to be able to produce against these teams like Winnipeg and Carolina. And you also just have the fact, like, you have a guy who's going to play one game over the next 7 days, while instead you can add a streamer in those positions depending on what kind of league that you're in, and keeping a guy on your team that plays one game over the next 7 days who's not even a point per game so far this season, I just don't think is the best kind of mentality. You have to have the next man up mentality when playing fantasy hockey. So I think the best option right now is to drop Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. All right, the next guy we're dropping, another guy that's, in my opinion, just way too high rostered in Yahoo Fantasy Hockey Leagues right now, and that's Claude Giroux on the Ottawa Senators. Makes sense looking at what his production was at the beginning of the season, but if you look at over the last 2 weeks, or really since the start of November, the Senators team definitely took a little bit of a dive, and so has Claude Giroux. As I mentioned, 90% rostered, but he has 1 point over his last 2 weeks of games over a 4 or 5 game span. There, his expected goals for over that same time frame is 0.59. That ranks 360th in the NHL, and he has just 5 shots on goal over his last 4 games, and just has created just 2 high danger chances. So not really doing a ton there for this Ottawa team offensively, and obviously not a ton for your fantasy hockey team either. But we saw this happen with Vladimir Tarasenko, who had a really hot start to the year, and then since then has really not done a whole lot. I was looking back, I was told you guys to drop Tarasenko back week 4. He's about 75% rostered. Now he's less than 50% rostered, so you could see kind of how that works out when you're looking at these Ottawa Senators forwards. I think the biggest thing is there's spurts where certain guys on this team will just go absolutely off. Tarasenko, it happened with him at the beginning of the year. Now we're seeing him slow down. Giroux kind of happened a little bit after Tarasenko, but we're seeing him slow down too. But if you look at the rest of the team, there's definitely been more consistent performers, and it's not like Ottawa's just not scoring at all. Because if you look at the last 4 games, Stützle, Batherson, Tkachuk, Norris, and even Matthew Joseph have over 3 points, or each have at least 3 points. So the scoring's coming from other factors on this team, other directions. I think Claude Giroux obviously struggling right now offensively. It's not worth having a guy in your team who has 1 point over the last 2 weeks played. There's definitely better options on the waiver wire. All right, next guy we're dropping, Reilly Smith on the Pittsburgh Penguins. 44% rostered right now. Through 20 games this year, has 6 goals and 6 assists. But over his last 7 games played, Smith has not recorded a single point. He has 13 shots on goal over his last 7 games played, so almost 2 shots a game, but has not recorded anything on the actual stat sheet when it comes to points. His expected goals for number also relatively low considering the amount of offense this Pittsburgh team tends to create. we just have not seen the same production from this second line of what it was when he was at its peak performance was Malkin, Reilly Smith, and Rickard Rakell. Rakell now out for some time. Malkin's been struggling as well, and Reilly Smith, who knows, maybe Rakell has been the missing piece of this puzzle and why the second line has not been able to get it going. I'm not going to put a ton of stock into that. Rust should be drawing maybe second line right winger position at this point. It's either be him or Drew O'Connor. Drew O'Connor spent some time on that first line as well while Rust was out too. So a little bit of line changing here for Steve Sullivan for sure. But we just have not seen the same production out of this line and Reilly Smith since the beginning of the year. And at 44% rostered with 0 points over the last 7 games played, there's just no way you can keep this guy in your team. All right, the next guy we're dropping, a guy that was actually in the buy low, sell high video last week, and that's Oliver Ekman-Larsson. 38% rostered now. We saw this guy get up to 50% plus at one point, and that was when Montour and Ekblad were out of the lineup and not playing, but these guys have been back for 5 games now, and it's been a completely different picture while looking at the defensive structure and how Paul Maurice has set up this team. Looking at his last 5 games, he's played 18 minutes, 19 minutes, 16 minutes, 17 minutes, and then 13 minutes the other night against Ottawa. Take that with a grain of salt, considering pretty much both teams in the third period all got game misconduct. So that could definitely be attributed to why you only played 13 minutes in that one. But when Ekblad and Montour were out, he was playing 23, 24 minutes, drawing a ton of play on the power play. Now, with Ekblad and Montour back, he's down to the third pair. He's not on the first power play anymore because Montour's back on the first power play. I mean, the guy had 73 points last year. Like, obviously, he's going to be the guy on that first power play, considering, or instead of Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's definitely past his prime at this point. He was a great streamer at one point of the season, but now you can drop him confidently. I don't think he'll really have any sort of fantasy hockey relevance for the rest of the year. All right, and the last guy we're dropping for this video, another Florida Panther, and that's Evan Rodrigues. 35% rostered, similar story to Reilly Smith here. A guy who started off really hot, was one of my must-adds at the beginning of the season, considering how this Florida Panthers offensive unit was kind of going. You know, Sam Bennett was still out. He was just getting a lot more playing time with some of the first units. Same with the first power play as well, but it's a completely different story now, and it kind of paints the picture on the stat sheet because he has 0 points his last 7 games played. He's still shooting a decent amount, like 52 shots on the season isn't horrible. A really low shooting percentage there, around 6%. But if this continues, there's too many good forwards further down on the lineup that could be taking his role on that first line, second line. That it just could be switching in the wrong direction for Evan Rodrigues here. And I don't blame Paul Maurice if he does do that, because Evan Rodrigues, known for his goal scoring ability, he has 1 goal in the month of November, and that's through about 12 or 13 games. So some really bad numbers from Rodrigues here. You could definitely drop him. I don't think his role offensively will increase at any point of the season. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of this week's must drop. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Download the FanDuel Canada app today, and I'll see you guys in the next video.